episode of Alter Your Health, your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. I'm your host, Dr. Benjamin Alter, and I am pleased to be with you here today. Another great episode. Today's guest is Andy Petranek. Andy and I go back 7 years now. He and I were classmates in our spiritual psychology master's program in Santa Monica. That was started in 2011. Yeah, I can't believe it's been 7 years. So Andy and I reconnected here on the podcast. He's been on an incredible life journey. He is a health and fitness leader, an inspirer and coach for over 25 years now. He was a United States Marine and a sponsored athlete by Red Bull in the endurance team obstacle sport of adventure racing. He founded one of the original 10 CrossFit affiliates in the world, CrossFit Los Angeles. And he is also the co-founder of the Whole Life Challenge, which is a worldwide 6-week online and in your life game you play with friends and family to improve your daily fitness and well-being habits. The Whole Life Challenge involves 7 daily habits. Those are nutrition, mobility, exercise, sleep, hydration, well-being, and reflection. Obviously, all amazing things that I am a huge advocate in personally, what I call, the foundation of health, the foundation of your life. So I love what Andy is doing with the Whole Life Challenge. The Whole Life Challenge is now, there are over 135,000 participants worldwide. Wow, how incredible is that? So such a great movement community that Andy has been instrumental in creating and supporting. And so in this conversation, we share how it has come to be and what it really is, the Whole Life Challenge, and also some of Andy's personal, how he lives his life his kind of personal philosophy to striking that healthy balance in his own life. So it was an incredible conversation with Andy. And one of the things that I really loved the most was evoking that deep laughter that Andy has inside of himself that is so infectious and so uplifting. And I hope that it touches you in a similar way that it always touches me to hear Andy laugh. And one thing that we didn't actually touch on too much is the fact that Andy has a podcast himself, an incredible podcast called the Andy Petranek Podcast. And he has wonderful guests on his podcast in a similar setup as I. So he's been doing his thing for a good while now. And yeah, he's got some great stuff. So tune in and check out the Andy Petranek Podcast. And also, before we get into it, just another reminder to subscribe, rate, review, share. That would be so awesome. Would really appreciate the support in those ways. And yeah, I guess that's about it for this intro. Without further ado, let's just sit back, relax, take a breath. And here we go with Andy Petranek. Cool. So welcome back to the Alter Your Health podcast. And today our guest is Andy Petranek. And me and Andy go way back, actually, like 6 or 7 years. And yet it's been almost about that long since we've connected. So here I am reconnecting with good old Andy. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's amazing. It's been that long when you say 6 or 7 years. Like, really? Has it really been that long? And I guess it has.
I just did the math.
Right. 2011 we started and we graduated in 2012 and
2013. Yeah.
2013. Yeah, 2013.
Yeah.
So that was really the last time.
Yeah. So yeah, for those listeners, Andy and I are talking about our experience at the University of Santa Monica, the spiritual psychology master's program. And that's where we connected. And I mean, before then and since then, Andy has been doing such incredible stuff in the space of health and wellness and fitness. And yeah, I want to learn more about, I guess, where do we start?
Well, it's interesting. I was just thinking about the timeline and the first whole life challenge happened during our first year at University of Santa Monica. It happened in 2011, and it was just a really small event for my gym. I had no idea that this was going to turn into anything. And then the first time we did it globally was during second year of USM. And I remember back to our groups, our teams that we were on, and
the second year project,
the second year projects, and the long meetings we used to have. And I went into a couple of those meetings with complete breakdown from the world of development and software development, and just like the world. It was very, very hard. It was but it wasn't related to anything I was doing in my project. It wasn't related to anything really at USM. And yet I look at the program now, and it's so in alignment with what I was doing at USM. It's no coincidence that the two things line up the way they do.
Yeah, totally. So, so give us, how do you explain what the whole life challenge is to someone who is totally unfamiliar?
It's a good question. So the Whole Life Challenge is a game. It's an online game that we created to give both ourselves as coaches. I wanted leverage over my clients. I wanted to get them to take action without me, without coming to ask me, without coming to, I can only have so many people asking me questions, right? So once I got to a community size bigger than about 100, 150 people, I needed other tools. So I wanted to have leverage over my clients, and I wanted them to be empowered to take action in their lives. And the game is this is a lot longer than what is the Whole Life Challenge. All right. The game it's a 6-week long game. People play it online, but in their life. They engage with their friends and their family. And the idea is that they spend those 6 weeks working on the habits that will lead to a healthier, happier, more complete version of themselves. And we've broken it down into 7 habits that we think basically are the fundamental, foundational habits that will do this. Nutrition, exercise, mobility, sleep, hydration, what we call well-being practices, which are things like mindfulness and meditation and gratitude and kindness and decluttering and those kinds of things. And then finally reflection. And over the course of a challenge is an event. We do 4 of them a year so that everyone is on the path together. There are points involved. There's a leaderboard involved, which are there to help people hold themselves accountable so that people on their team have a way to, comparison can be a bad thing, but it can also be a really valuable thing if it's contextualized well. Mm-hmm. If you're using it to compare yourself to beat yourself down, like I would say, well, that's not such a great use of comparison. But if you're using it to kind of lift yourself up or to stay more accountable to what is hard, that's really the intention of the leaderboard and the points in the Whole Life Challenge.
Got it. Yeah, I really love all of the points. What especially interests me is the point on reflection. It's such a, I imagine that it's such an important concept in the Whole Life Challenge to take time to reflect. It reminds me almost of like a yoga practice and Shavasana. Shavasana is, the receiving of the value of the yoga practice. And it seems like reflection would offer that kind of comparable. Like, tell me about the reflection in the Whole Life Challenge.
Yeah. it's funny, when we started it, we didn't have reflection, and then we offered it as a bonus. Like we were like, okay, well, we're not going to require it. It'll just be you'll get bonus points if you leave a reflection. And once we did that, people basically always left a reflection. Like they were like, well, I'm going to get the bonus, so I'm going to leave a reflection. So then we just added it in, and it became, for me, the reason we added it in as the 7th habit is I mean, really, it could be the first habit. I mean, like, it's such a important piece. It raising your consciousness around what you're doing.
Mhm.
Look, you could have the world's worst day, but being able and willing to look back on that day and reflect on that day and be conscious about the choices you made that led to the day being what it was. I mean, that's gold. That's the gold. That is, life doesn't have to go well in order to be able to learn something by reflecting. So the habit of reflecting is so valuable.
Yeah.
Good, bad, right, wrong, up, down, left, right, whatever it is. And, I always said reflecting is like doubling the effectiveness, but it's really more like 5 times the effectiveness, doubling the effectiveness of your habits, because you do the habit. And then later in the day, you have to go back and reflect on what you did. So you get to kind of revisit that habit twice,
Yeah.
which, helps to anchor it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I really love the way that you articulated all of that. And yeah, it's like really hammering something down. It's like anchoring it, as we
Right.
would say. Um, so I want to learn a little bit about like the backstory, and you talked about how this kind of started in your gym.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a gym.
Okay. So just a quick getting us up to where I was then.
Yeah.
I was a musician. The first 18 years of my life, I was a classically trained trumpet player, and my mom and dad both were. My mom was a violinist, a professional violinist, and my dad was a conductor, orchestra conductor. So I lived a very different life growing up. I was around music. I had a tux when I was like 3. I went to classical concerts. It's funny because my wife is in the music business, but in the pop music, like pop, she doesn't make music. She puts it in movies. And I used to be the world's worst at knowing who was what on the radio or on Spotify or whatever. Because
Despite being a musician all your
I
life.
could tell you
Yeah.
what Brahms symphony was on, or what
Yeah.
Bruckner was on, or Mahler, or Beethoven, or whatever. I knew all the symphonies. I played most of them. So it was just, it was always kind of a standing joke. Oh God, don't ask Andy, whoever is, because he won't know. He has no idea. But then I cut to when I went to college, I discovered, I earned a ROTC scholarship because I really had no idea what I was going to do in college. And I got this scholarship connected with the Navy, and decided it would be a fun adventure. It's a 1-year commitment at first, and you get to experiment. Do you like it? Do you like this? And was it a cool year? It's free.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, why would I not do that? It seems like it's interesting in any, and it was so different from my life, as a musician. It seemed like fun. So after that year, I decided this is fantastic, and it was really fun, and it was everything I wanted to do and be. And but I shifted from a Navy person to a Marine, and at the end of college was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, and spent 4 years in the Marines. Really, that was my first experience as a coach, because my platoon had to be combat ready, and my job was not just fitness, but everything from their life at home to their proficiency in their job to their proficiency with a weapon, and their everything. Like how do I make these guys most combat ready? In a time, in '88, it was a peacetime Marine Corps. There was nothing really going on in the world, and ended up doing a couple things. I was in Panama when it was kind of a friendly-ish invasion of Panama that we did I think it was in 1989. And then I was in the first Persian Gulf War in the Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield and Desert Storm. But got out of the Marine Corps, was very into adventure stuff. So I started mountain biking, I started rock climbing, I started mountaineering, climbed Rainier a couple times, climbed Whitney several times, did a lot of winter stuff, snowboarding and skiing. And I really left all this music stuff behind me. And then I learned about this thing called the Eco Challenge. That was a long distance adventure race. Like when I say long distance, it was like 450 miles. You know,
Wow.
you did with
Like
a
a
team,
multi-day kind of thing.
multi-day, like all strategy based,
Yeah.
all like you had to use a map and compass to navigate your way,
Wow.
which is totally what I love. I learned how to be pretty good at that in the Marine Corps. And I, on a wing and a prayer, I drove to their offices. I met Mark Burnett, who was the founder of the Eco Challenge. He's the founder of like all reality TV. I mean, he
Oh,
started
wow.
Survivor after Eco Challenge. He became kind of this
Huh.
TV legend for reality television.
Interesting. Cool.
And I met him, and he's like, "Look, we got like 2 more spots for teams. I need a check for $10,000." And I wrote him a check. I was like, "I'm in. I don't have a team. I don't know what I'm doing, but I had like 9 months to get ready, and I figured it would happen. And it's kind of my way. I jump into things, and I found a sponsor. I got my money back from the sponsor, and built a team, and started into this whole new world of adventure racing. That lasted about 8 years. And over that time, I was, of course, in really, really good shape. And I had people asking me, how do you get in such great shape? And I started training those people. I also went back to massage school. And then I went back to school to become more knowledgeable about physiology and with nutrition and exercise science, and so I because I wanted I felt like it was important for my authenticity to be more than the exercise guy, who knows how to do this but doesn't have any substance behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And that brought me up to like 2003, when I stopped adventure racing, and then I was kind of surfing around the internet and looking for what was my next thing going to be. And I discovered literally bumped into CrossFit. I stumbled on them on a website, and decided, I'll give this a try. This looks interesting. It's free. Why not? And it reminded me, it pulled me back into this world of like how much fun testing yourself against your resolve to keep going was. And I loved it. And I used it to kind of fuel me and fire me. And I found quickly that I could, instead of spending an hour to 2 hours a day training, like for endurance, I could do these 20 to 40-minute workouts, and still have the endurance and be stronger in almost every other way. And I became a quick convert to CrossFit. And then I opened up the 9th CrossFit gym in the world, CrossFit Los Angeles. And that was the gym. That was the gym that this whole life challenge came out of.
Mm-hmm.
I had built that from 2004, and then cut to 2011. I'd been running these fitness challenges, like over 8 weeks. How much of an improvement can you make in a certain workout? And they were hugely popular in the gym. They were super fun, but they were only focused on fitness, and that was where my head coach and I, Michael, who's my business partner now in the whole life challenge, were always trying to figure out, well, how do we bring these other elements of real health and well-being into play, so that we're not just fitness coaches, but we're actually influencing lives at a much deeper level.
Yeah, I definitely want to come back to the whole health and well-being picture, but I want you to complete the story on the first whole life challenge.
Yeah. So we, the funny thing is, our first attempt at bringing a nutrition conversation in, which was hopefully going to open the door into a lot of other areas, was a dismal failure. I mean, it was, we decided we were going to create something called Food University. And it was a coached program, required showing up twice a week to the gym. There were classes. You had to get your blood tested. it was it was thorough. It was actually a great program, but people weren't coming to the gym to do those kinds of things. That was not, the context was wrong, and the price point was wrong. I think we had to charge, in order to even come close to making it worth our time, we had to charge, I think it was $4.95 for it. So we had like 12 people in the first class, and only about 3 of them actually followed through and finished the program. And, it's not that it was really a failure. It's that didn't make a difference. In a community of 300 people, having 3 people finish your nutrition well-being program, that's
it's like
a lifetime to everybody through this, So we went back to the drawing board, and we're like, okay, well, that didn't work. Can we do this in a way that will work? How do we do this in a way that will engage more people, lower the price point, reduce the amount of volume of work we have to do, allow people to rely on the community more than rely on us as coaches? And that's when we kind of came up with this format, and the points and the leaderboard and the practices. We basically took the fitness challenge and we just added these things to it. And we had a couple of software developers that were clients. We were going to do it on a Google spreadsheet. We were going to invite everybody to come, and they would be able to edit the Google spreadsheet every day. And that would have been a complete disaster. With 50 people. I mean, we had 150 people. Imagine 150 people all trying to edit the same Google spreadsheet.
And now you were talking something about 30,000.
Well, yeah, of course that wouldn't work. But we didn't, at the time, we didn't think that. This was just for our gym.
Of course,
this was just a cool thing for the gym. And we had 2 members that were software engineers, and they built the first, real basic version of the game. And it was so powerful just in the first iteration of it. I mean, it changed the fabric of the context of the conversation in the community. It changed the engagement level of people. It created a cohesiveness of people helping people, rather than people looking to us to be their answer, to have all the answers. It got them doing things that put them out of their comfort zone and understanding why, reading labels and, real basic stuff. And it introduced things in a gentle enough way that allowed people to engage fully, rather than, and not kind of judge themselves for not being able to do it. Because if you look at my history and you think Marine Corps and CrossFit, you'd think, oh God, this guy's whole life challenge is going to be like, the workout's going to be an 8-hour-a-day workout, or it's going to be some crazy intense
I'm not
thing.
signing up for that.
Yeah, exactly. All my Marine buddies, none of my Marine buddies have done the whole life challenge that I can think of.
You're too hardcore for them.
Well, right. I mean, it's hilarious because the whole life challenge requirements are so fundamentally, easy. They're not easy. They're not easy when you repeat them.
They're gentle. They're gentle. They're gentle and they're accessible. Mm-hmm. They're accessible. And what I really love, and maybe you can speak more to it, but it's really there's an entry point for absolutely every human being on the planet, right? It's not like you must be this tall to play, or you must have this much fitness or this much health. It's like exactly where anyone might be in that moment.
We decided early on that we didn't want to be the purveyors of justice in the whole life challenge. We didn't want to you didn't have to submit a video to prove that you did something.
Yeah.
We decided that using someone's honor and integrity, and pushing them into deciding for themselves. Why are you asking me what counts?
Yeah,
what counts for you?
I really believe that, humans act as adults when they're treated like adults, and we need to provide more of an adult-like environment for people to show up in.
Right.
I think that we have in a lot of parts, this, broad strokes here, but a lot of parts of our society kind of babies people.
Yeah.
And, we need to be holding ourselves accountable. We can't be looking and turning towards everyone for support and answers and pats on backs. I mean, that's great too, but yeah, I love the, you know, adult like accountability aspect to it all. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, well, we also built in, we know how valuable having that community is. So we built into the game communication through reflection, where you are engaged with your people and you're moving through this together. Because I think otherwise we'd be really just like another habit tracking app. You know, like I have some habit tracking apps. Almost every single one of them I stopped doing after a certain period of time. Like there's no, because I don't have a level of accountability. It's just with myself. Nobody else is seeing my numbers. Nobody else is doing it with me. It's just me. And while that can work, and there's some people that works great for. And if that works great for you and you are fully accountable because you have a little system that great, it's fantastic. But I would say those people are in the minority in the world.
Yeah. Not only that, the quality of connecting with the community and sharing learnings and sharing support, you know, our world needs more of that. You know,
Right.
I think our world, I think we live in a very kind of cutthroat, competitive world a lot of the time. And to all be on kind of the same team for once when it comes to our own game,
Right.
I think that's, you know, I think it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it proved to be very effective. You know, it's funny how well that first version worked. I mean, that was really shocking for us. And maybe it shouldn't have been, because I've really been working on this kind of thing for 15 years. I mean, if you go back to when I was a Marine, you know, I've been really working on the question, how do I get people to take action on their own? How do I lever people into being responsible for their own health and well-being? And it's no wonder it worked the way it did, because it was a question in my mind for so long. And the fortunate thing was that I listened, you know, and could do it in a way that was realized that gentle was a better way, and allowing for people to do more. Look, it's not wrong to have a 2-hour workout if you're training for Ironman. But allowing my mom to engage, along with, who's 83, along with me, along with somebody that's 20 something who's trying to, you know, run a marathon. Like there's room for all of those people. We call it more of an operating system. It's like an overlay that anybody can put on their life, and the overlay will highlight those areas that are in which you're incomplete, where you're, you know, it's kind of like, have you ever done one of those what are they called? It's like a fan chart where you evaluate, like it's like
like a holistic life evaluation kind of thing.
Yeah. And you'll rate each part of your life, and you'll see on this circle where the peaks are and the valleys are.
Yeah.
Well, this the Whole Life Challenge kind of does that for you. You start to see where, as you go through this thing, where the challenges are. Is it in sleep? Maybe it's in sleep. Maybe it's in hydration. Maybe it's in willingness to really have meaningful reflection rather than just, hey, had another great day in the Whole Life Challenge, you know, which some people do.
Yeah.
And it's very effective that way. And that way, anybody, you know, you can be a yogi and do it. You can be a hardcore athlete and do it. And you get to see for yourself kind of what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah. Sounds like it's just the platform, the context, the community to take your life to the next level.
Yeah.
In some regards.
And the people, you know, like there is a, you know, this playing field. I always say that we're kind of the purveyors of the playing field. Like it's our job to make sure that it's as fair as we can make it, that it's protected, like it's a tight-knit community, and that the environment, kind of like if you were a biologist, you'd have this little petri dish, and you know, you got to make sure that that environment inside the petri dish is the right environment. And that's our job, to make sure that to be the purveyors of that playing field.
Cool. Yeah, I love it. So can you take me a little bit from, you talked about, in the gym with 30 people or 150 people or something like that. And now it's obviously online with thousands of people like around the world. So what was the impetus to like, what was the impetus, and then how did that unfold, and how long did it take to like really be where you are?
The impetus was, this works too good to not share with the world. Like this was too, we felt compelled, we felt pulled to share this. And, given my background in the CrossFit world, I was an early adopter, an OG in that world. So a lot of people knew who I was. And one of my pet peeves as a business owner in the CrossFit world was there were a lot of people who had built things or services for CrossFit owners to bring into their community, but they all cost the business owner you had to pay for them. It would improve the value of your service. So theoretically you could charge more, but there was no connection to, you didn't earn anything for it. And I know that if you're fully altruistic and you're in this business to serve other people, perhaps you shouldn't think so much about money. But for me, money is another one of the realms. It's as much an important element because it's the piece of trade that we use to function in the world. And I always said that if I ever developed something that was useful for other CrossFit gyms, because that was the context I was in, that I would make it so that they were my partners, so that they were earning a piece, so that their people could thrive, their businesses could thrive, and I would thrive. I would make some of that money too. And so that's what we did. We opened up the second challenge it was still within our gym, but we opened it up to friends and family of members of the gym, and we doubled in size. And the stories that came out of that, the results of that challenge were very much similar to what came out of just our community doing it together. And that's when we were like, okay, we've got to make this, we've got to go bigger with this. And we created a business model around doing it. We partnered with I had created a business in the midst of all this where I was helping other CrossFit gyms be better at business and be more successful at business. And I had a partner in that business that I had separated from because for various reasons, I wanted to focus on coaching and running a good gym. And we went back to him and we said, hey, look, we've got this thing. It's incredibly effective. We'd love for you to bring all the people that you're consulting with, all these business owners from CrossFit gyms, into the First Whole Life Challenge. And he said, great, let's do it. We gave him an exclusive, deal to do that. And we connected him with a piece of the proceeds. We connected each one of the gyms with a piece of the proceeds. And we had, in that first challenge, we had like 7,000 people in the, it really launched us into this whole new world.
Wow. Yeah.
And at that time we were doing one challenge a year. We quickly bumped to 2 challenges a year. And now we're up to 4 challenges a year. We actually lowered the duration. It was an 8-week challenge, and we just this year lowered it to a 6-week challenge and increased to 4 times a year instead of 3 times a year. We didn't know. I like using the language getting pulled forward. We really had no idea what we were doing or how to do this. We didn't realize we were getting into a completely different business. We did not, Michael and I were both coaches. We weren't typically, when you have a startup, a tech startup, which is pretty much what we are. You've got a founder that's either a software guy or a lawyer or maybe the visionary person. Mm-hmm. And then you've got a partner who's the lawyer or the
Yeah,
technology person, or you've got because you need the work, you need to be able to get the work done for no cost at first.
sure.
Well,
Yeah.
we were in the fortunate situation where we were making money right out of the gate. This was a beta tech startup, and we didn't even know that we didn't even know that's what it was. So we didn't know to call it that, and we were getting people to pay for these challenges and
Yeah.
delivering value. Not that we weren't without hiccups, but because we had some pretty catastrophic hiccups along the way that fortunately we got people to stick with us. But we had some really tumultuous mistakes, technology mistakes that were challenging in those first couple of years. But we kept forging ahead, and we went from that 7,000 to we kept bumping up, and we've grown since then at about 20% a year. We Each challenge takes on kind of a flavor of its own. The January challenge has always been our biggest challenge of the year, because it's the time everybody's thinking about, what are their New Year's resolutions.
New beginnings.
Yeah. We found that the challenge we do in the fall is the second most popular. I have a suspicion it has to do with, like some of the debauchery that goes on in the summertime and the party and the vacation. You're back from vacation and you're back to school.
Totally.
We're doing this year. We're doing a challenge for the first time in the summer. We're doing a July challenge, which will be really interesting. I think it's our philosophy is engage more and enjoy the time off between the times you're engaged. So you go in these cycles of engagement and accountability to relaxation and rest. And by doing that, you can actually maintain a slow trajectory, a slow, slightly curve up.
Yeah, I did, it has come to me, this question of, it's called the Whole Life Challenge, which I love because it incorporates not just, nutrition, not just exercise, not just mindfulness, but like, all of it. And it occurred to me, I had the question, it's interesting that it occurs just over these 6-week or 8-week time periods rather than a whole life. So
Yeah, right.
tell me about like the in and out of it and how, like how that works for you personally, and maybe what
Right.
the feedback has been. Yeah.
Yeah, when we first started this, of course, we didn't know this was going to be a long-term thing. We didn't know we were going to do more than one a year. We didn't know. I mean, there's a lot of things we didn't know. Our mindset was, this will do it. Just do the Whole Life Challenge once, and you change your life, change your habits, what ended up happening accidentally for me was I ended up enrolling in every Whole Life Challenge. I've done like 20 now, 19 or 20. And what I discovered is my context started to change. I was always how quickly can I get things to change? I still like the idea of that. It's fun to change things quickly. But what I realized is the change doesn't happen quickly. I mean, if you look at evolution, I use Jordan Peterson has a model that he talks about chaos and order, and it's this continuum of chaos and order. And life is somewhere in the middle. Like you have to have a little bit of chaos in order to make things interesting and make things fun and make it an adventure. But the minute you throw it too far into the world of chaos, life pulls you back. Because you can't, it's not sustainable. And I think that's one of the big mistakes people make. That's one of the thoughts that we were operating from when we started the Whole Life Challenge. Go after your whole life in one challenge and change your life. And while it's certainly possible, what we found was the people that had the greatest long-term effects from the challenge are the ones that continue to engage over and over and over again. And we wanted to make that easier for more people to do, like, so that the effectiveness of the challenge came from allowing yourself to be accountable and then looking forward to relaxing. And you know, it's what is natural in the world of athletics. You don't peak all year. You can't peak all year. You can't stay, you know, there's a reason that football season or baseball season is a little bit too long, I think. But those seasons are they're seasons. You have an off season. So the way I look at the challenge is you've got an in season and then you've got an off season, and you've got an in season and you've got an off season. And as long as your commitment is to be willing to engage at the start of the next on season, you can almost do whatever you want in the off season. I mean, I've had periods between challenges where I literally have done whatever I wanted, and I'm still maintaining a slow trajectory upward.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more of that, because I feel like I actually don't necessarily fully align philosophically with that. I don't really like the work hard, play hard mentality, though it obviously works for some people. I like the take care of myself hard all the time, like full on, like just take care of and sometimes that looks like working hard and sometimes that looks like playing hard, but there's a steady stream of self-care, like full on all the time in my world.
Yeah.
And so tell me more about your like when you talk about the off season and doing whatever the heck you want, because I'm sure you're not doing what, like,
you're 100% right.
Yes, I'm sure you're not, like, you know, doing lines of cocaine and
yes,
like, you know,
exactly.
like just go, all right, we got to laugh. We got an Andy laugh.
Yeah. So what I found is the off season is a version of the on season. Well, you think about it. Yeah. Think about it. It's easy, I think, if you think about a football player.
Yeah.
You know,
they're not on the couch eating Doritos for like months.
And if they are, there's a price to pay. Yeah. And they can learn the price to pay when they go back to spring training or summer training and find out, you know, it used to happen to, like, was it the Fridge? I don't know. There's some famous football players, some of the big guys, some of the guys that are linemen and whatnot, who, you know, spent no time in the off season doing anything except eating and drinking. And, you know, they'd show up to training camp 30 pounds overweight or 40 pounds overweight. They'd lose a contract. They would, you know, and so the idea is you may have to go through that experience to learn that that's not serving you, which, who am I to tell you can't do that? But it's really the willingness to re-engage each time. And what I find very often is if I go off the handle, you know, and start doing whatever I want, I get sick of myself. I get sick of it, and I get sick of myself, and I usually restart something, you know, and I'm accountable to something rather than all 7 habits. I might choose, you know what, I was really feeling good avoiding bread while I was on the challenge. I've been eating pizza, I've been eating dessert and cake and, you know, sandwiches, and, you know what, I'm gonna, even though we're not in the challenge, I'm gonna avoid bread as much as I can, you know. And so it really takes on the shape of what you're willing to do. But the idea is that there's a period of more accountability and less accountability, and it doesn't have to be completely hog wild in the off accountability. It could just be a little bit relaxed. You're not scoring yourself. Maybe it's just you're not scoring yourself every day.
Yeah.
You know, but you're still living by the principles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that. And you were talking about an upward trajectory of, would you say, your health? What's this line that's slanting upwards as you're coming in and out of each of the whole life challenges?
Well, hopefully it's your health. It's your sense of well-being. It's because, you know, when you talk about goal setting, and you've got two kinds of goals that people typically will set: their process goals or their result-based goals. And I try to keep people focused on process goals. Results will happen,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing you can't necessarily control when those results are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are focused on your process, your daily or weekly or monthly process, are you doing the things that where are your values? Are you living into your values? Are you being responsible for your life? Are you doing the things each day that will both make you feel better about yourself and will lead to shifts and improvements in your health and well-being? Then you're aligned. And so hopefully what ends up happening is you start seeing those markers shift over time. And for some people it's a 20-year curve, and for other people it might happen more quickly. You just don't know. If you've been building, you are today the aggregate of the person you've been working on being for the last 40 years, 30, however old you are. You've been working on being who you are to get to the point you are today every day for the last, let's say, 40 years, right? If you decide you want to be somebody different tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to just happen overnight. I mean, imagine you've been building a ship for 40 years and it's a I don't know, it's a catamaran.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just going to have a cigarette boat tomorrow because you decide that you're sick of catamarans and now tomorrow you want a cigarette boat. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't happen that way. You can start making the shift in your behaviors to match what a cigarette boat would operate like, but it's going to take you time
Mm-hmm.
to get into looking more like a cigarette boat. I mean, I don't know. That's just an example off the cuff, but yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that health is really a process. Is that,
Yeah.
and how else would you define the health process?
Well, I
What's
think one of the big pieces is that the judgment is the way we, one of the elements is the way we consider ourselves and as we look at ourselves, as I look at myself, learning how to be compassionate with my process and reduce the expectations that I have to be, say, perfect, or to do it right, or to be good enough so that I'm good enough for others to honor me or respect me. Like, it's learning how to forgive and let go of those expectations that you've had in your life for being good enough. And it's a much deeper, that's a spiritual part of the journey, and it's a much more profound and deeper element that going through these habits brings. It will bring, with or without a consciousness around it.
Yeah, well, it's true that that's more of a spiritual context, but I see it really as something that's so like the most critical piece, because it's like, if we are doing the whole life challenge and scoring at the top of the list, and we are beating ourselves down throughout that process,
Yeah.
who's the winner? Like,
Right.
I know I won't feel like the winner, but if I become the winner before even engaging with the whole life challenge, and and I'm compassionate with myself first and foremost, like waking up each day regardless, like that's step one. Then what follows, really, it's like, we'll see, it doesn't really matter.
It's hard to know the right sequence, because I think you're right.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. If I could give everybody a gift tomorrow and it was one thing that would lead to their lives being better, it would be what we're talking about. It would be the release of comparison and judgment of yourself compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and self-compassion.
Yeah. But unfortunately, I can't do that.
Come on, Andy. Give us the
and
gift.
and I don't know what comes first, the cart or the, is it the cart or the horse? There are a lot of people who, I have two clients who were my full-time private clients when I first started the First Whole Life Challenge. And they're competitive, they're type A, they're driven, they have really high-powered jobs. They used to train together in their training sessions and used to love it because they would compete against each other and this whole thing. And I explained to them the rules of the game. And this was when we were just doing it for our gym. And we had bonuses. And we didn't, at that time, we didn't have a cap on the points. You could earn bonuses. You could earn all the points, and then you could earn bonus points on top of the points.
Now we're talking. Yeah.
Yeah, now we're talking. So in spite of all my coaching, and this is when I was going through USM, and we were learning the spiritual context and all this stuff that, self-compassion. In spite of all my one-on-one coaching with these people, they could not help but do it the way they were wired to do it, which is not only am I going to have a perfect score in the 7 Daily Habits, I'm going to get every freaking bonus point, and I'm going to kill myself to do it. And they did. I mean, they went hog wild, and they were tied right up to the very end. They ended up with tie perfect scores. And, they didn't start to get it until probably their third or fourth challenge. It took them that long to realize that misses the whole point. The idea is not to try to perfect your score. The idea is to try to live a life that contains happiness and well-being and joy and self-acceptance, whether you're perfect or not. And disconnecting the doing from the being, the doing of these things, that will make you feel better about yourself. It's a hollow pursuit.
Yeah.
And they took them. I had to let them. I mean, it's funny because I could have fired them as my clients. Some trainers would have. Some trainers would. You guys aren't doing this right. You're not doing it the way I said. Sorry, I'm not going to work with you anymore. And I chose not to do that. And they did get it. It just took them a while.
Yeah. And that's a really great reminder. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it's just so important to know. And especially for me personally, that everyone is on their own unique journey. And it's like, duh. It's like, duh. Yet.
Right.
It's like, duh. Yet, I come into this frame of thinking but come on, guys, just do it. Just do it the way that I think, from my perspective, looks like the way to do it. Which obviously we're right. Right. Yeah. Andy, our perspective is right.
We have the right way. Exactly.
We know, right. We know the best. No, I'm just kidding. But
where I've learned that the most, the hardest part of that for me has been right in my own home.
Say that again.
Right in my own home. That's been the most difficult part of this journey, because I have a son who's 11 and I have a wife who's very successful and very, very busy in the world of business and Hollywood. And I know the way. I know the way to, I'm being a little bit sarcastic.
Yeah.
I'm trained. I've been studying this stuff for 25 years. I mean, I know this is what I do for a living. People come to see me from around the world to change these things. And yet I have a limited impact in my own house with the willingness of my family to engage this way. And I've had to learn patience and compassion, and I've had to operate in a different time, on a different timeline. Like, I've had to learn what baby steps really are. I've had to learn that my way is not the only way, and reconciling that has been a really big piece for me, because it's very hard to watch someone you love doing something that you think is killing them, and especially when you know that it, in a way it is.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I mean, but who am I to say that somehow that am missing something that's killing me? I mean, so it's but that's been one of the biggest challenges of my journey, and personally, is to find acceptance and learn how to support, especially my wife, in her path, in her way, and very different than my way. And
Yeah.
I can still love her, as she goes through her life that way.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about unconditional love, and that's exactly what it is. It's loving someone while they're, quote unquote, killing themselves, or maybe they're literally killing themselves. We can still love them through that.
Yeah.
And, it's not easy, but
I think it's much more natural as humans to access the judgment,
yeah,
you
yeah,
should, the should word, you
yeah,
shouldn't be doing it that way.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, I love that we've, landed in this space, which I naturally tend to do in conversations. I'm curious, any specific rituals or routines that you have personally in your life when it comes to your health and well-being, aside from the whole life challenge, but,
yeah.
Maybe in the off season?
Well, I mean, for me, the on season and the off season blend a lot.
Yeah.
I am less hard on myself. Not hard on myself. I am more less accountable in the off season, because I have an 11-year-old and I love eating ice cream, and I love to go to Blaze Pizza with him. And it's not that I do it every day, but I am definitely more inclined to let myself slide in those areas during off seasons rather than during the challenge. But some of the things that are really important to my day when I'm okay. Well, let's see. This got to back up, because I love the morning. My mornings are, I mean, so precious. If I could really set my life up exactly the way I wanted to, which, that's funny I say it that way, because I could.
Caught ya.
I'd be getting up every morning at somewhere between 4 and 4:30, and I would have, an hour and a half to 2 hours of complete quiet time before the birds start chirping, before anybody else is up. That I just love that time of day. What the reason I don't do that is I tend to stay up at night, and I like watching modern, like, television shows, and I love playing guitar. And so I stay up and I play guitar and watch shows simultaneously. And usually that means I don't go to bed until 10 or so. And if I go to bed at 10, and I typically I want 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep, that puts me awake at like 5:30 or 6. So that's my routine that I have adopted. And I've accepted that as okay. I'm willing to trade off that early morning for the joy that I get from watching the television and playing guitar.
Yeah.
So but getting that, I'm not willing to sacrifice the sleep. The sleep for me is I have to, and some of the fun things I do with sleep, I have a sleep mask. I tape my mouth shut at night, because I want to go into parasympathetic, and nasal breathing puts you right there. So I have this cloth tape. It's got a name. It's like a
Yeah. I forget.
I can't remember the name of it, but it's a special tape that is more gentle, and it sticks really well to skin. And I also I try to meditate every day. Try to is the key word. I have not been great. I just actually got this new device when I was at PaleoFX called the Muse headband, which is a biofeedback device you wear that goes around your head. I like having metrics. I've always been, when I used to ride bikes, 400 miles a week or 300 miles a week, a lot of my time on the bike would be spent running numbers. This was my average. Okay, this is my pedal strokes. I'm doing this many RPMs. What do I need to do when I turn the corner in order to keep my average high? If I go up this hill, like I would be running these calculations. I was a very much of a in the moment cyclist, not a avoid what's happening cyclist. And so for me, metrics have always been very, very fun. And so I'm trying this Muse headband out because it gives me something more than just meditate. It actually gives me something to do. Well, it gives me metrics that are fun to track, and it tracks my. Not that I think I need it, but if there's anything that helps me be more accountable to meditating, which I feel is very, very, very important, I will do it because I'm not very disciplined about. There's always 10 other things I could be doing, and typically those 10 other things win over meditating. So, so meditation. I have a journaling practice that I cycle in and out of, a daily journaling practice, and it's short. I usually write about gratitude for one to three things. I make a list of the things that went well that day or the day before. I write a little paragraph about what I'm learning currently. If I'm upset by something, I'm learning that, I don't know. And then I identify what would make today a great day. What are the things today that would make it good? So I try to keep it pretty structured and short. Otherwise, I could go off the handle, and I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
And then I try to get in mobility every day. Like mobility, maybe exercise, but I find that right now mobility maintains a much higher level of importance in my life for my long-term body's health. So, that could be an athletic warm-up, which usually I have a video that I follow that's my own video that is like a 15-minute warm-up, athletic warm-up thing.
Cool.
Those are my main things.
Yeah. So essentially, there's a lot of aspects from the whole life challenge that are steady throughout.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm hearing you. And yeah, I think that comes back to that point that I was making, not going in and out, but having not having like the on game, but the off game, or the on season and the off season, but having like something steady throughout. So there's a lot of those steady rituals.
It's more for me though about the way I'm being accountable for it. Like I'm much more gentle on myself in the off season. Like if I leave something out, okay, no big deal. And I'm even pretty gentle with myself while the challenge is going on. So
I think that's good too.
I am a little bit more accountable. I am a little bit like I've resisted wanting to start a whole life challenge. Like I would talk to my business partner. I'm like, Michael, I do not like, this is just not in alignment for me. He goes, look, just start. And so I remember distinctly, there have been a few challenges where I literally just started and I just started scoring my life. And I would start off with some really dismal scores. I mean, losing all my nutrition points by lunch and not, by the end of the day, I've only, been successful in maybe one or two of the habits. And 9 times out of 10, by the end of that first week, I look at what I'm doing and I'm like, you can do better than this. Come on. But I don't feel that I could do better than that when I start the challenge. So it's just been a willingness to start, a willingness to, I like to call it the show up muscle.
Yeah.
Willingness to show up.
Totally. I feel like that leads me to ask you kind of a final question, like words of wisdom. One of them might be willing to show up. Words of wisdom to someone who's wanting to, kind of move the compass of their health and their life and their well-being.
Yeah, I would say there's no wrong step.
I love that.
It's very easy to get paralyzed by the desire to take the right step. And what's the right step? Yeah. And what I found is if you just treat every step as practice, this is practice for where I might end up. I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I'm going to take this step because I don't know the right step, but I need to take a step. I need to take an action. And this is practice. I may change my mind. I may decide a different step is more appropriate a month from now or 2 months from now, but I'm going to move. It's the paralysis of and the non-movement, that the stagnation that is really what we suffer, where we suffer.
Yeah, man, I really resonate with that. I can get into analysis paralysis personally, where I'm just kind of thinking about things. And yeah, I love the action-oriented way of approaching life, and just not, and that I love it because that frees you from the possibility of making a mistake or a bad move, because I love the idea of it's all just practice. It's all just, maybe like an experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all an experiment.
Love it. So Andy Petranek, where can people connect with you in the world besides wholelifechallenge.com?
Yeah. So we didn't talk about it much, but I've recently started a monthly newsletter.
Yeah.
And I have an andypetranek.com website, so andypetranek.com.
Yeah.
And my podcast is also the Andy Petranek podcast.
Yeah.
And
so many things
still inside the context of the Whole Life Challenge. But say that again.
I was just saying, so many things we didn't touch on.
Yeah, no,
but time flies.
It always happens that way, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I my Instagram and Twitter and Facebook are all very easy. They're just at Andy Petranek.
Cool.
It's I welcome new listeners to the podcast, and I welcome new people subscribing to my newsletter. My newsletter is just a bunch of, usually like very pithy, bulleted things that I'm learning that month. So it's very either useful or not. Like if it's not useful, just ditch it. Just delete the email. But they're easy to read. They're links to things. They're apps that I'm experimenting with, and I'm finding value in, and or just ways of thinking. I remember this month, one of the things I linked to was a video from the filming of the song from The Greatest Showman. This Is Me is the name of the song. It was a title song. It won an Academy Award. Yeah. And my wife worked on that movie and did was responsible for early on music stuff. And she happened to be there when this video was shot. And it's one of the most powerful music experiences that I've ever seen. She was in this room while they were filming this, and Hugh Jackman was there. The whole cast was there. This was before the movie was even greenlit. Wow. And they were singing the song. It was to a piano, and Hugh had just had some sort of surgery where his doctor said, "You can't sing. You're not allowed to sing." And he's sitting there listening to this, and the music's getting more and more powerful, and the message is more and more powerful. And all of a sudden, he just breaks in, and it's like he could not stop himself, and he breaks in singing, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I've heard about this. I've listened to the song, but I haven't seen the video.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Cool. Awesome. So thank you so much for your time, Andy. And we'll be in touch.
Great to reconnect.
All right.